Shocking betrayal. My husband slept with my best friend, and she had his child. I lost everything I trusted in one night. I never imagined my life could change so drastically in the span of a few moments. My name is Claire, I'm 32, and I had been married to Jason for almost 10 years. From the outside, our life looked like a storybook marriage. Laughter filled our home. Intimate conversations lasted late into the night, and there was an unspoken bond that made me feel safe and cherished. Jason was attentive and caring, and even after all these years, I felt the spark of passion between us, albeit quieter and steadier than in the beginning. I trusted him completely, believing that our shared history and devotion could withstand any challenge. Our daily life was a blend of routine and warmth. Mornings were a delicate dance of hurried showers, shared coffee, and brief kisses before we embarked on our separate workdays. Evenings brought a sense of calm. Cooking together, discussing the events of the day, or simply sitting side by side in comfortable silence, feeling connected without needing words. Weekends were moments of freedom, lazy breakfasts, trips to the market, or lounging on the sofa with blankets, movies, or deep conversations about dreams, fears, and plans for the future. It all felt perfect, balanced, predictable, and utterly satisfying. I considered myself lucky to have a partner who not only loved me, but also truly respected and valued me. Yet, beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, subtle cracks existed. Tiny, invisible fractures that I never noticed. There were fleeting moments of unease I dismissed as overthinking. The occasional pause in his voice, a distracted look, or a subtle hesitance when speaking about certain topics. I convinced myself that these were minor quirks, nothing more. I was confident that our shared history, our 10 years of companionship, and the life we had built together were impervious to betrayal. The idea that Jason could ever be unfaithful, or that someone I considered my closest friend could be involved in such a betrayal, was unthinkable. My closest friend, Emily, had been by my side for nearly a decade. We laughed together over small triumphs, comforted each other through losses, and confided in each other our most private fears and hopes. She knew everything about my life, or so I believed. We shared weekend coffee rituals, casual shopping trips, and even vacation plans. With Jason, from my perspective, our bond was unshakable, a constant source of comfort and joy. Little did I know that this friendship, which I had trusted implicitly, would become the channel through which my entire world would unravel. For years, our home had been a sanctuary of love, comfort, and mutual understanding. We had built a life together based on trust, shared responsibilities, and small rituals that reinforced our connection. Sunday morning walks, coffee runs before work, weekend getaways, and quiet nights at home reading or watching movies. I felt secure, content, and blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind smiles and polite gestures. Every laugh, every touch, every quiet moment felt genuine, reinforcing my belief that we were invincible together. The notion that my life could be shattered by the people I trusted most seemed utterly impossible, yet in retrospect, the signs were there, hidden, subtle, and almost invisible until it was far too late to ignore. Emily and I had known each other since college, and over the years, our bond had grown into something I considered unbreakable. She knew all my insecurities, my hopes, and even the smallest quirks Jason and I had developed together. Weekends were often spent together, laughing, over brunch, swapping stories about our childhood, or dissecting the latest drama in our social circles. I felt like I could tell her anything, every thought, every worry, every fleeting fear about my life or marriage. In many ways, she was more than a friend. She was a sister I had chosen. However, over the past year, subtle changes began to emerge. Emily started sharing more about her own frustrations with her marriage, but I noticed a certain intensity in the way she spoke about attraction, desire, and freedom that went beyond casual complaints. I brushed it off as harmless venting, thinking everyone sometimes exaggerates their feelings to sound dramatic. Yet there were moments when her glances lingered on Jason a little too long, or when she seemed unusually eager to join our home dinners or outings. These details, small and almost imperceptible, slowly built up a sense of unease in the back of my mind. But I convinced myself that it was nothing. That I also noticed that our conversations began to include subtle hints about marriage, dynamics and fantasies that I had never discussed openly before. Emily often mentioned men she found charming or irresistible, always framing it as hypothetical scenarios. But her tone carried a certain curiosity that unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. She would tease me about Jason, jokingly, asking if he ever noticed other women or if I ever let him indulge harmlessly in fantasy. I laughed along, thinking it was just playful banter between friends, but these jokes planted seeds of doubt. Despite these small signs, I never truly suspected that Emily could cross any real line. She had always seemed loyal and trustworthy, and our shared history reinforced my belief that betrayal was impossible. I believed in the foundation of our friendship and in the integrity of her character. And yet, looking back, I realized that her fascination with the boundaries of desire, coupled with the closeness we shared in my home, created the perfect environment for something dangerous to take root. The combination of trust, proximity, and unspoken temptation would eventually lead to the most shocking revelation of my life. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Little inconsistencies began creeping into Emily's stories. Times she said she was at home alone, but later mentioned events I had never heard about. One evening, Jason had a work dinner, and Emily insisted on just stopping by to keep me company. At first, I smiled politely, thinking it was harmless. But there was something in the way she moved, the way her voice carried a peculiar warmth whenever she mentioned him, that made me pause. Her laughter that night was different, sharper, almost teasing, with a brightness in her eyes that seemed out of place for a casual visit. Over the next few weeks, the subtle signs multiplied. Emily spoke of Jason in ways that went beyond ordinary admiration. She commented on his charm, his confidence, even the way he handled minor frustrations at work. It wasn't overt, but there was a tone, a spark, that made me uneasy. I caught glimpses of her phone once, accidentally, while she was showing me photos from her weekend. There were messages from a contact with a nickname I didn't recognize, playful, intimate, carrying undertones that made my stomach twist in knots. I told myself I was imagining things, that it must be coincidence, but my intuition nagged relentlessly. Then came her increasing eagerness to spend time alone with Jason. Just casual visits, she said repeatedly, just helping him with little things. Yet the moments she described were full of laughter, soft touches, and a comfort that clearly surpassed mere friendship. I noticed the way she lit up when his name appeared in conversation, and how subtly her body language shifted in his presence, leaning slightly closer, her gestures softer, her attention almost magnetic. Even her subtle compliments, seemingly innocent, carried a weight that made me feel a twinge of anxiety every time I heard them. One evening, I couldn't resist paying closer attention. While Emily was distracted, I noticed how she checked her phone nervously when Jason texted. There was a spark in her eyes, a quick smile, and a slight flush on her cheeks. It was as if a part of her was alive in a way I had never seen before. I began cataloging little things, sudden excuses to visit him, prolonged phone conversations, inside jokes that excluded everyone else, her tendency to linger near his workspace longer than necessary. Each small detail, I realized, was like a brushstroke in a painting of betrayal I hadn't wanted to see. The more I watched, the heavier the tension grew in my chest. Every casual mention of Jason made me question reality. Every laugh they shared, every secretive glance, was a reminder of the possible truth I was afraid to face. I kept trying to rationalize it, telling myself that perhaps I was overreacting, that maybe she was simply enjoying friendship. But deep down, I could feel the undercurrent of something far more dangerous, something that could shatter not only trust but the foundation of the friendships we had all built. I started noticing patterns in her behavior I couldn't ignore. She became more meticulous with her appearance when she knew he would be around, lingered at places where he might show up, and seemed unusually eager to share details about her day if it intersected with his life. Even casual mentions of her past or of mutual friends seemed calculated to impress, to gain his attention. My heart sank with every observation, each moment a reminder that the invisible line of loyalty and trust between us was being eroded quietly but steadily. By the end of the month, My anxiety had morphed into a gnawing dread. I had no concrete proof yet, but every small, seemingly insignificant action painted a picture of betrayal so vivid that I couldn't unsee it. I felt like a bystander trapped in a story I never signed up for, forced to witness a bond won once. Trusted being dismantled piece by piece. It was a slow, almost cruel realization. Betrayal, if it existed, was happening right under my nose, hidden beneath the smiles and reassurances that had once felt so genuine. It was a rainy Saturday when the truth finally hit me like a punch to the chest. I had gone to pick up a package from Emily's apartment, and she wasn't expecting me. The hallway smelled faintly of her perfume, mingled with something unfamiliar. A scent that didn't belong. I knocked lightly, heard a shuffle inside, and then froze. Through the slightly open door, I caught sight of Jason sitting on her couch, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. My heart skipped, then slammed painfully in my chest. They weren't just friends leaning in to chat, they were close. Too close. Intimate in the kind of way that made my stomach churn. For a long moment, I just stood there, unsure whether to retreat or confront them. My mind raced. Had I imagined all the subtle signs? The way she lingered on her phone when he texted, the way she brightened at the mention of his name, the little excuses she made to meet him. Everything clicked into place in a terrifying, undeniable pattern. And then the reality of it. The countless moments she had spent lying, smiling, pretending everything was normal, while this betrayal unfolded quietly behind my back that I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but fear paralyzed me. I watched as she laughed at something he whispered, her hand brushing his in a gesture so natural it broke me a little inside. The room felt smaller, suffocating, the rain outside drumming in perfect rhythm with the panic rising in my chest. It wasn't just a fleeting betrayal. I realized then, with a sick twist in my gut, that this had been going on for months. Months of smiles, of trust, of believing in a friendship that never truly existed in the way I thought it did. Every instinct I had told me to run, to escape the scene before my emotions got the better of me. But I couldn't. I wanted answers. I needed to understand why. The why that could possibly justify years of hidden lies, whispered secrets, and stolen moments that were meant to be sacred between friends. And then, as if the universe had a cruel sense of timing, Jason looked up and caught my gaze. That split second, his expression, a mixture of guilt and disbelief, was all I needed to confirm it all crashed down. I remembered the subtle clues, the nickname on her phone, the hurried texts, the nervous giggles, the unexplained trips. Every piece of the puzzle fit perfectly now, painting a picture so vivid that my heart ached. And then the other layer hit me like ice water. Emily's husband, whom I trusted as a friend, had been oblivious or complicit, their actions intertwining in ways I couldn't begin to comprehend. The web of deception stretched further than I could have imagined, the betrayal now a tangible presence in the room that I wanted to confront them, to demand an explanation, but words refused to form. The shock, the anger, the hurt, they all collided into a silent scream in my chest. I stood frozen, heart racing, as they both realized that the carefully maintained facade had crumbled in an instant. I saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes, the brief panic in his, and I knew the moment of reckoning had begun, that I finally found my voice, though it trembled and cracked like fragile glass. "How long?" I whispered, my words barely audible over the rain tapping against the window. Emily froze, her eyes wide, guilt and panic mingling in a way that twisted my stomach. Jason looked away, avoiding my gaze, as if hiding could erase what had been done. My hands shook, clutching the doorknob like it was a lifeline, grounding me to reality while my mind spun uncontrollably. "You don't understand," Emily started, her voice trembling, trying to find an excuse, but every syllable felt hollow. How could she? After everything, years of friendship, trust, laughter, shared secrets, she had woven a hidden life of betrayal right under my nose. My throat tightened, and a sudden rage flared up, hot and blinding. "I trusted you. I believed in us," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to remain calm. "And all this time it was a lie?" Jason finally spoke, his words measured, but weighty. "It wasn't meant to hurt you. It just happened." Happened? That one word, so casual, so dismissive, felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to make them understand the devastation they had caused. Every memory of shared laughter, every inside joke, every moment I had confided in Emily now felt poisoned. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was an assault on the foundation of my reality. As the minutes dragged on, the room seemed smaller, oppressive, as though the walls themselves were closing in to witness this collapse. Emily tried to reach for me, her hand hovering in the air like she could physically mend the broken pieces of trust. But I recoiled, a visceral reaction to years of deception, unable to forgive so easily. I could see the regret in her eyes, the shame she carried, but it did nothing to lessen the magnitude of what had been done. And then, the revelation that shook me even deeper: the child. Emily had lied to her own husband, but the shock intensified. When I realized that her child wasn't his, it was Jason's. The implications hit me like a tidal wave. The tangled web of lies extended further than I could have imagined. Every smile, every casual conversation, every shared moment in their supposed normal lives was now corrupted by the weight of deceit. My world tilted, a dizzying spiral of disbelief. In heartbreak, I backed away, hands trembling, mind racing. How could they betray not just me, but everyone around them? The depth of their deception was staggering, a labyrinth with no clear exit. I wanted to collapse, to cry, to scream, but instead I felt a cold, burning clarity. This was a turning point. Nothing would ever be the same. The confrontation had begun, and the fallout would stretch far beyond this small, rain-soaked apartment. The days after that confrontation blurred together like a stormy haze. Every corner of my apartment, every familiar sight, seemed to echo with the betrayal I had uncovered. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head. Emily's wide, panicked eyes, Jason's cold avoidance, the devastating revelation about the child. Sleep eluded me, replaced by a constant churn of anger, confusion, and a gnawing sadness that refused to relent. Even simple tasks, making coffee, checking emails, or walking down the street, felt tainted, as if the world itself had turned untrustworthy. I started avoiding calls from friends, unable to explain the collapse of my world without breaking down. My own reflection became a stranger. I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me. How could someone I trusted so implicitly, someone I had shared my life with, betray me so completely? Each day, I felt the weight of their duplicity, pressing down harder, a relentless force that left me drained. And yet, a small, stubborn part of me clung to disbelief, hoping it could all be a horrible mistake, a bad dream I might wake up from. The complexity of the situation, Emily's betrayal layered with Jason's infidelity, the secret child, made it impossible to compartmentalize my feelings. I oscillated between anger and a strange, reluctant sympathy. How had they justified their actions to themselves? Was it desire, recklessness, or some twisted sense of inevitability? And what about the child, innocent and oblivious to the chaos surrounding their birth? Every scenario I imagined seemed more unbearable than the last, and I realized that no amount of reasoning could lessen the emotional devastation. That I began journaling obsessively, writing down every memory, every suspicion, every conversation that had once seemed mundane but now felt like a clue in a puzzle of deception. The act of writing provided a tiny anchor, a way to hold on to some semblance of control when everything else felt chaotic. Yet, even on paper, the betrayal's magnitude was undeniable. I could see it in black and white: years of friendship and trust reduced to fragments, scattered like glass shards across the floor. Social media became a minefield. I would scroll through mutual friends' posts, each image a reminder of the false smiles, the hidden moments I would never truly know. I avoided direct contact with Emily, and yet she remained omnipresent in my thoughts. Jason, too, became a specter of what could have been, the man I thought I knew now unrecognizable. I felt suspended between grief and fury, unsure if the pain would ever subside, and if forgiveness, even if I wanted it, was possible. After weeks of sleepless nights and endless rumination, I knew I had to take concrete steps to reclaim some sense of stability. I started small, reorganizing my apartment, decluttering spaces that had begun to feel oppressive, filling them with light and color rather than memories that pricked like thorns. Every action, from washing the dishes to watering my small balcony garden, became a ritual of self-restoration. I told myself that these mundane tasks were not just chores, they were tiny affirmations that I still controlled my own life. Even if the people I trusted had tried to steal it from me, I also began setting boundaries with friends and acquaintances who, knowingly or not, brought up Jason or Emily. Conversations that once felt casual now carried potential triggers, so I limited my exposure. At first, it felt isolating, but soon I realized that creating this distance allowed me to breathe, to think clearly, and to evaluate my emotions without interference. I took long walks in the park, letting the physical exertion mirror the mental effort of untangling myself from years of betrayal. Therapy became a crucial lifeline. Sitting across from a professional, voicing thoughts I had buried for too long, brought clarity. I confronted the anger, the grief, the disillusionment, and the fear of future betrayal. Articulating these feelings out loud allowed me to see the layers of deceit, not just from Jason and Emily, but also the ways I had unconsciously excused or overlooked warning signs. The process was painful, but necessary. Each session left me a little lighter, a little more prepared to reclaim my autonomy. Simultaneously, I started reconnecting with the parts of myself I had neglected. I joined a local book club, rediscovered my love for painting, and took evening classes in subjects I had always been curious about but never pursued. Each activity was a small victory, a reminder that my life did not end with their betrayal. Slowly, I began feeling more like myself again, a person who could find joy, who could set goals and chase them, and who could trust her instincts once more. At 18 night, I journaled extensively, recording not only my emotions but also reflections on lessons learned. I wrote about trust, resilience, and the importance of boundaries. These writings became a private testament to my growth, a record that while betrayal had altered my world, it had not destroyed my identity. Every page was an act of reclaiming power, a conscious declaration that my life would not be defined by their treachery. The day I decided to confront Jason, my heart was a storm of anticipation and dread. I had rehearsed my words countless times, in my mind, trying to maintain composure while still expressing the depth of my pain. I invited him to meet at a quiet cafe, somewhere neutral, away from the weight of our old home and memories that might cloud judgment. As soon as I saw him, the familiar mixture of attraction and resentment surged. He looked the same, but now under a veil of undeniable tension that I started cautiously, recounting small instances of suspicion, testing his reactions. Each pause, each nervous glance, each half-smile told me more than any admission ever could. When I finally asked about Emily, his face went pale, and the casual confidence I had once trusted dissolved. He tried to deflect, claiming misunderstandings and exaggerations, but the weight of evidence I had gathered, the details Emily had let slip during a careless text, were undeniable that I could see the conflict in his eyes, the first flicker of guilt or maybe fear of exposure. But it was too late. I had prepared for this moment not just with evidence, but with my own emotional armor, and I could finally articulate the betrayal in clear, unflinching terms. I detailed how I had discovered the affair, how I had pieced together the timeline, and how the shared deception with my once best friend had eroded my trust beyond repair. Jason's attempts at justification felt hollow, almost surreal. He admitted to certain moments, avoided others, and occasionally broke down, revealing the truth that he had been torn between lust and the life he supposedly valued with me. I realized, painfully, that his love for me, if it had ever been fully genuine, had been entangled with selfish desires that overshadowed our years together. I left the cafe with a mixture of relief and heartbreak, knowing that confrontation was both a culmination and a beginning. It was the first time the secret had been fully out in the open, and though the weight of betrayal still pressed heavily, I felt a strange liberation. No longer was I carrying the burden alone or in silence. Jason's complicity had been exposed, and the path forward, though uncertain, was now mine to define. Returning home that evening, the apartment felt unbearably quiet, each shadow and familiar object a reminder of the life that had been quietly crumbling around me. I sank into the couch, my mind replaying every interaction at the cafe, the subtle tremor in Jason's hands, the fleeting regret in his eyes, the lies that now seemed so casual in hindsight. I realized that betrayal is never just one act. It is a slow accumulation of moments, of whispers and hidden glances, until suddenly the illusion of trust shatters. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, my former best friend. The woman with whom I had shared secrets, laughter, and countless confidences had been complicit in this web of deceit, and the shock of that realization burned hotter than anything I had ever felt. My mind kept returning to the quiet betrayal. In her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching, the subtle smirks, the stories that didn't add up, all now making a painful, indisputable sense. Tears came and went in waves. Not just for Jason's duplicity, but for the friendship I had lost, the life I had imagined that no longer existed. I wondered how two people, who had shared so much history, could so easily betray the trust one had placed in them. Anger surged, mingling with a profound sense of sorrow and disbelief. Yet beneath it all, a small, resilient part of me recognized that this confrontation, painful as it was, had opened the first door to reclaiming my autonomy and my dignity to die. Spent hours writing in my journal, detailing every emotion, every memory, every doubt and fear. By the time the night deepened, I had begun to piece together a plan, not for revenge, but for clarity and eventual closure. I knew conversations with Emily would be inevitable. I needed to understand the why behind her choices, to see if there was any shred of remorse or insight. For Jason, the betrayal was clear, but I realized that my own healing required confronting the deeper patterns of our relationship, acknowledging my own blind spots, and deciding where my boundaries truly lay. The following afternoon, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I arranged to meet Emily at the park, the place where we had spent countless afternoons laughing and dreaming as teenagers. My heart pounded violently, a mix of anger, grief, and disbelief fueling every step toward her. The moment I saw her, the casual smile she tried to wear cracked under the weight of our shared history and the secrets she had carried that I didn't start gently. My voice shook, but I demanded the truth, every detail of what had happened between her and Jason. Her face paled, and for a split second, I thought I saw genuine remorse, but it was fleeting, replaced by nervous defensiveness. She admitted it all, not sparing a single lie, confessing how the affair had been secretive, calculated, and, in her mind, justified by circumstances. My world tilted. Everything I had trusted, every memory of friendship and love, felt like sand. Slipping through my fingers, the anger surged uncontrollably, tears blurring my vision. I couldn't process how two people I had trusted could betray me simultaneously, how Jason had hidden this from me for months, and how Emily had dared to act like nothing had changed. My hands trembled, and I realized that this confrontation wasn't just about knowing the truth. It was about reclaiming my voice, standing in the storm, and acknowledging the pain without letting it consume me entirely. By the time I walked away from that meeting, a strange emptiness settled in. I knew our friendship was irreparably broken, and Jason's betrayal had forever altered the fabric of our marriage. The confrontation didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it crystallized the reality I had been avoiding. I would have to rebuild, to make choices about love, trust, and boundaries that I had never considered before. The confrontation was not just about accusation. It was a painful, necessary step toward reclaiming my life. The days after the confrontation were surreal. I felt like I was living in a fog, moving through routines on autopilot while my mind replayed every conversation, every lie, every stolen moment that had been kept from me. Sleep came in short, fragmented bursts, and food felt tasteless, as if the betrayal had drained color from the world. I realized I couldn't lean on Emily or Jason for comfort. Their roles in my life were fractured beyond repair. Instead, I turned inward. I started journaling every night, pouring my confusion, anger, and heartbreak onto the pages. At first, it felt like screaming into a void, but slowly, it became a mirror reflecting my own strength. I revisited old hobbies I had neglected, from painting to running through the empty city streets at dawn, letting the cool air hit my face and remind me that I still existed outside of their deception. I reconnected with friends who had remained neutral or unaware of the drama, finding solace in conversations that weren't tainted by betrayal. That I also sought professional help. Talking to a therapist for the first time was terrifying. I had always considered myself independent, able to handle anything, but admitting the depth of my pain and my feelings of inadequacy was liberating. The therapist helped me understand that Jason's actions and Emily's betrayal were not reflections of my worth, and that rebuilding trust in others would be a gradual, intentional process. To be by the end of the first month, I began to see small changes. I laughed without guilt. I went out to cafes alone and enjoyed my own company, and I even allowed myself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by what they had done. Each step, though painful, was mine. I was reclaiming my life one decision at a time, and while the scars of betrayal would never fully disappear, they no longer dictated the rhythm of my days. Months passed, and life gradually took on a new rhythm. Jason and Emily had been permanently erased from my daily world, their presence replaced by silence and absence that was both painful and strangely freeing. I stopped checking social media, obsessively for updates about them, stopped imagining their lives without me. Instead, I focused on my own growth, career, friendships, and personal passions that had been neglected during the years of trust and comfort I had placed in them. I also realized the profound lesson about boundaries, trust, and self-respect. The betrayal had shattered not only my illusions about Emily and Jason, but also the naivety with which I had trusted too easily. I forgave myself for not seeing the signs, for believing in a perfect friendship and an unshakable partnership. That forgiveness was essential. It was the bridge that allowed me to step out of the shadow of hurt and reclaim agency over my own life. Eventually, I began dating again, cautiously and deliberately. Every interaction was measured, every emotional investment intentional. I refused to rush, to let history repeat itself, and to surrender my sense of self for someone else's convenience. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the weight of betrayal still lingered, but with each choice I made for myself, small joys, decisions at work, moments of laughter with genuine friends, I felt stronger and more grounded. Looking back, the shock of discovering the double betrayal had initially felt like the end of my world. Yet, in truth, it had been the catalyst for rediscovering my independence, resilience, and the kind of life I was willing to build for myself. Jason and Emily were gone, but I had emerged intact, scarred, yes, but wiser and more capable of loving myself first.